That's Duff McKagan. He's the bass player for the Guns N' Roses, and he's now come out as anti-gun. I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name, too. So Jenn posted an article making fun of him, and I kind of wanted to get in on it, too.
First of all, this was one of the first bands I ever saw in concert. Mm-hmm. So I was a little disappointed. But apparently, Duff McKagan has an article or a column at Noisy, which is an offshoot of Vice, called Hey, Did You Hear? And one of his latest articles was sharing his views on gun laws and his call for gun control, which was really, really fun to read because it just showed how very little he actually knows about what gun laws are in America.
Yeah, the parts that I read from his article, it demonstrated very clearly that he was suffering from what I like to call a case of, he basically fell victim to what I call the elusive obvious. What tends to happen is you get individuals who think they know about a subject and from very superficial understanding of it, and then think, oh, it makes perfect sense in my mind, not realizing that, no, there are levels to this. You think you understand something, but then as you get deeper into it, you understand that there are certain aspects to it that you may not have accounted for, i.e. universal background checks. From that perspective, people always tell me it seems so harmless. Well, no. I mean, maybe from the 30,000-foot view, maybe so. But when you start actually thinking about how to implement a universal background check, that's when we start getting into the weeds and to the muds. And then you start to realize, oh, okay, now I see what you're getting at. But for him, because he's an aging rock star and because he knows better than all of us, he's in a position to tell us what I consider to be the elusive obvious in his mind.
Right, but what's worse is he's using his platform in this article to push things that are not true. He's saying there aren't background checks on gun sales, all gun sales. Yeah. And he's saying, what is the problem with banning AK-47s? There shouldn't be a problem. Well, I see a problem with that. Yeah. I really do. And I really take offense to him saying, well, I was a Democrat, but some Republican ideas are really good and socialist. Well, okay. You're just kind of running the gamut now, aren't you?
He has a political ideology.
Of course, his final line was, don't believe the NRA emails you get. It's pure hooey. I mean, how can you argue with that, right? He says it's hooey. Okay.
Now, the funny thing is, we sit here and we laugh about it, but man, this dude probably has scores of people who follow him, like you said and you pointed out, who are going to believe every word that comes out of his mouth because they probably know less than he does about firearms. And so they're going to take to him as a false authority on the matter. And they'll start to craft their perspective and their ideology behind the firearm around his. And like you said, he's putting out a false narrative about things. Like, for instance, the idea that no one's ever going to come for our guns. I hate hearing that. I mean, I hear it over and over and over and over again. People think like there's just going to be some mad march down the street with all these government officials knocking on everybody's door coming to take their guns. But then when I point out, what about all of these countries that these politicians praise, like the UK, Australia, they all engaged in a gun confiscation of some sort. Whether it was an elusive confiscation or a blatant one, they confiscated guns. But for somehow when we bring that up, we're tinfoil hat wearing crazies who just like to fearmonger and get people all riled up and scared that somebody's going to come take your guns, and that's never going to happen because that's hooey.
Right, but you know what? I don't care if somebody's showing up at my door to get all my guns or if it's the government actually taking slow, methodical steps to ensure that I can't have guns or my children can't have guns. Absolutely. Either way, it is an infringement on my Second Amendment rights.
Yep. And then I tweeted out today, I'm like, it's called it says shall not be infringed, not infringe a little bit every time the left or the anti-gun decides to.
Put some restrictions on it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Which, okay, you know what? For the very, 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 very first time, I'll hear you out. The second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time, it gets to a point like, okay, it's kind of clear what you guys are doing here. Like, let's stop it. But the problem is we have individuals who are very new to this conversation who have never followed it before. And so they think these are the first measures ever implemented in terms of gun control. When in reality, no, they've been doing this for decades. And then they've been systematically, incrementally chipping away at our Second Amendment rights.
And saying that we don't have enough common sense to actually have guns. So now they're imposing, where was it? California. Now it is a law that you have got to lock up your firearm in your vehicle when you leave it in there. So it has to be in a secure container. Those kind of things that is the slippery slope. You're halfway down the hill, California. Thank you.
Yeah.
But, he writes in his article too, well, what is the problem with restricting gun rights for anyone on the no-fly list?
Maybe because somebody shouldn't be on the no-fly list to begin with.
Well, and how many government employees were on there? 72?
Yeah.
So I do see a problem with that. And ever hear of due process? I mean, you're an attorney.
Well, no.
Do you see a problem with that?
No, due process. Who needs rights? Due process what? I mean, that's essentially the mentality, though, that they have with respect to things like due process. But again, like you said, he is preaching to the people who are reading Noisy and reading this and thinking, oh, okay, he's writing this. He has a platform. He must know what he's talking about. There aren't background checks on gun sales. We should have that. Yeah. And so then you get a proposition on at the voting booth, and you say you see universal background checks. Oh, background checks, yeah, let's do it. And it's interesting though. It's kind of like everything seems so common sense to them with respect to gun control laws. But then when we talk about gun control laws that actually exist, like the ones in California that do require you have your gun locked in your container, when you actually carry the gun in your car for safety reasons, what makes you think that anything about that is common sense? If I'm in a situation where I need my firearm, how am I supposed to logically get to my gun in time to actually unlock the box, load the magazine, and then actually use it to defend myself? Where's the common sense in that? But I don't see them critiquing that with the same standard of common sense with respect to gun control laws. So then when I see you talk about or critique the fact that we don't have certain gun control laws, and you say, well, we should have them because it's common sense, I'm sorry, but you're full of,
Right. And I think if we actually had an opportunity to sit down with these people and have a conversation face to face and say, look, here are my concerns. I don't want to put my gun in a criminal's hand. So, of course, I don't want it anywhere where they can smash my window and steal it. I get that. And I don't want any more gun violence. But here are my suggestions. Fix the background check system. How's that? How about keep criminals in jail when they break the law? That's groundbreaking.
That's too easy. It's too
easy, right?
Yeah, so you have to complicate it a little bit. But the funny thing is they are engaging. They love to engage in doing the most easiest component of things. So in an attempt to scale down what they consider to be an issue with gun homicides or gun violence in this country, they resort to the most overly simplistic approaches, which don't do much of anything except hamper or hinder the people we're not really worried about to begin with. So if you listen to the rhetoric and the way they talk about some of these laws, it's always geared towards people like you and I. They don't even really mention criminals or people who aren't supposed to have guns in the first place. It's always geared towards how do we make this harder for you to use your firearm? So we'll require that you have to lock it in a safe. Well, when you're in your car, it has to be in your trunk or in a lockbox, and then the magazine has to be separate from the other source of ammunition, and all sorts of other ridiculousness. And
the other sad thing is that the NRA puts out a ton of fantastic videos. I know Wayne LaPierre has the truth about background checks, and I have shared that about 100 times myself personally, much less on bearing arms. We share it a lot.
Yeah,
but there is a certain segment of the population who will refuse to watch that video simply because it comes from Wayne LaPierre and or the NRA,
absolutely,
which is really sad. But I think that those videos are a really good tool for citizens like us to then take that information and relay it in our own communities to affect that change locally and then hopefully nationally.
Absolutely. But one thing that we can do is continue to do our best to put that information out there front and center for people to consume. And it's left to them to take it up and do what they will with it. But we'll continue to keep doing what we do. Thank you very much, Jenn, for joining me. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. You have a good one. And coming up, we're going to talk with the CEO of Patron Ordnance when we come back.